My name is Amara Peterson, and I am 32 years old. I am standing on the quiet, tree-lined sidewalk just watching the way the late afternoon sun hits the porch. My porch, my house. The keys feel heavy in my left pocket, a solid, tangible weight that confirms this is real. It is not a dream. After 10 long years, it is finally irrevocably mine. The air smells like fresh-cut grass from my neighbor's yard and the damp, rich earth of my own flower beds. It is the scent of stability, a smell I never knew I was missing. I look at the front door, a deep, sturdy oak, and the brass number plaque. This is my address. My anchor, 10 years. A full decade, 120 months. I spent that time in the fluorescent-lit trenches of the Chicago marketing world, climbing a corporate ladder. I was not even sure I wanted, all for this single moment. People see the job title, the executive salary, the corner office I finally secured last year. They see the polished professional success. They do not see the escape. It was never just a career. It was a getaway vehicle. It was my armor and my camouflage. Every brutally early morning, every late night staring at spreadsheets until my eyes burned, every sacrificed weekend, every sharp soul-hardening client negotiation, it was just another dollar in the escape fund. I was not just building a career. I was building a fortress, one impenetrable brick at a time. I was buying my freedom. I was purchasing my silence. I was acquiring the right to be left alone, one grueling PowerPoint presentation at a time. I was running from the heavy, suffocating expectation that I would always be the provider, the fixer, the reliable one who never asked for anything in return. This house, this 1920s bungalow with its classic sage green trim and the wide, welcoming porch, it is so much more than brick and mortar. It is infinitely more than hardwood floors and original crown molding. This house is a statement. It is the physical, undeniable, three-dimensional proof that I exist. It is the evidence that I have value, a value completely separate from the suffocating, all-consuming shadow of my family. Growing up, I never had a room of my own. Not really. I had a bedroom, of course, a space with 4 walls and a door, but it was never mine. It was just a temporary space I occupied, until my worth was determined by someone else. It was a room where my achievements were minimized and my sacrifices were expected. This house is the room Virginia Woolf wrote about. It is the sanctuary I carved out of the world with my own 2 hands, a place where my accomplishments cannot be diminished, ignored, or handed over to someone else as a consolation prize. It is a declaration written in cedar shingles and a concrete foundation that I am here. I am solid, and I am done being invisible. This is my ground. I have claimed it, my family, the Petersons, the very shadow I ran from. My parents, Walter and Denise, raised us in a modest suburban home in Minnesota. They are good people in the way that people who provide food and shelter and new school clothes are called good. My father, Walter, is an accountant. He is a man who understands numbers, spreadsheets, and balanced budgets, but not the emotional nuances of his own children. My mother, Denise, is an elementary school teacher. She is a woman who pours her nurturing energy into classrooms full of strangers' children, but leaves her own daughters starved for affection. Then there are my siblings. My brother, Andre. He is 24, the baby of the family, the quiet one, often lost in the noise and collateral damage of the family's primary conflict. And then there is Bianca. Bianca, my sister. She is 28 years old and the undisputed center of their universe. She is the princess. I am the carrier. It has been this way since the moment she was born, all blonde curls and bright manipulative tears. I was the responsible one, the serious one, the high achiever, the one expected to set the example. Bianca was the charming one, the beautiful one, the sensitive one, the one expected to be adored and above all excused. My entire life has been a silent, grueling competition. I was forced to run against an opponent who never even had to show up to the race. I got a full scholarship to university. Bianca got a party and a used car for deciding on a community college major, which she promptly dropped 2 semesters later. I worked my way into management through relentless overtime. Bianca was celebrated for bravely quitting a job she hated to find herself. I carried the weight of their expectations. I carried the burden of their silent disappointments. I carried the financial strain when my father's firm had a bad year. I carried their anxieties. Bianca carried nothing but a designer handbag usually paid for by our parents. This house is where I finally set that weight down. This is the line in the sand. This is the place where their definitions of me stop and my own definition of myself finally begins. Our childhood home in Minnesota was a beige suburban box, neat and tidy, just like my father's ledgers. Walter Peterson. He was a man of predictable patterns. He left for the accounting firm at 7:45 a.m. and returned at 6:15 p.m. He provided, and in his mind, that provision was the beginning and end of his fatherly duty. He provided for us, but emotional warmth was not his strong suit. My mother Denise was different, but no less complicated. She was an elementary school teacher, a woman who spent her days being patient and kind and warm to other people's children. But when she came home, she was depleted. The well of maternal warmth was dry, reserved only for special occasions or special people. For us, or perhaps just for me, her love was conditional. It was a reward for good behavior, excellent grades, or most often, for silence. I was 4 years old when Bianca was born, and that is when the dynamic, already fragile, shattered completely. She arrived as this perfect porcelain creature with blonde curls and bright blue eyes that captivated everyone. I, with my quiet disposition and serious questions, was suddenly old. I was the responsible one at 4 years old. My parents doted on Bianca in a way I had never experienced. Their faces softened when they looked at her. Their voices, usually tired and practical, became high-pitched and sweet. The disparity was never clearer than on birthdays and Christmases. My gifts were practical, chosen to improve me. I received books, encyclopedias, educational toys, a chemistry set. They were gifts that said, be smarter, be better, achieve. Bianca received beautiful, expensive dresses. She got dolls with intricate outfits. She got charm bracelets. Her gifts said, you are perfect. Be adored. I was told to be responsible, to watch my sister, to help my mother. Bianca was allowed and encouraged to be carefree. She was allowed to be messy. She was allowed to be loud. She was allowed to simply exist. The comparisons started early, and they were relentless. It became the soundtrack to my childhood. Amara, why can't you be more like your sister, became a common refrain in our household. My mother would sigh this when I was reading in my room instead of socializing at a family gathering. Bianca knows how to make people smile. You are always so serious. I remember one afternoon, I must have been 9, I had just won the school spelling bee. I came home clutching the blue ribbon, my chest tight with pride. I found my mother in the kitchen. Before I could even show her, Bianca ran in crying because she had fallen off her bike and scraped her knee. My spelling bee was forgotten. My ribbon was dropped on the counter unnoticed as my mother and father spent the next hour comforting Bianca, kissing the scrape, and promising her ice cream. My achievement was invisible. Her minor pain was a catastrophe. I need to explain what that phrase, why can't you be more like her, does to a child. It is not just jealousy. Jealousy is a surface emotion. This was something deeper. It was erosion. It was the slow, steady sanding down of my own identity. It was the universe telling me that my natural state was incorrect. I was the wrong shape, the wrong temperament. I was not charming. I was not carefree. I was not the daughter they wanted. My existence was a problem to be solved, while Bianca's was a fact to be celebrated. This comparison created a rift between us, a canyon of resentment and misunderstanding that only grew wider as we got older. If I could not win their affection through my personality, which they had made clear was deficient, I would make them proud through sheer, undeniable achievement. I would become so successful they could not possibly ignore me. I would build an armor of accomplishments so thick that their casual dismissals could no longer penetrate it. So I threw myself into academics. I became a machine. I joined every club, the debate team, the mathletes, the student council. I volunteered at community events, racking up service hours. I maintained a perfect grade point average. I studied until 2 in the morning. I gave up weekends. I sacrificed friendships. I became the epitome of the responsible, serious daughter they claimed to want. I was driven by a desperate, hollow need to prove that I too was worthy of their attention. But the validation never came. Not really. Every A+ on my report card earned a quiet, "That's nice, Amara." Every award I won earned a "Good job, honey." "Now can you watch your sister while we run to the store?" My achievements were not celebrated. They were absorbed into the family narrative as just another part of my function. I was the overachiever. It was my job. It was expected. It was like thanking the furnace for producing heat. It was just doing what it was supposed to do. Bianca, meanwhile, would get a C- on a paper, and my parents would take her out for dinner to celebrate her trying so hard. They praised her effort while they only acknowledged my results. I learned a critical lesson in that beige suburban box. Love was not free. It was not unconditional. It was a currency, and the exchange rate was different for me. Bianca was given love freely, an endless allowance. I had to earn it nickel and diming my way through spelling bees and science fairs, only to find the bank was always closed when I arrived. This realization settled into my bones. It became my operating system. If I wanted recognition, I had to build it myself somewhere far away from them. I had to create a success so large it would cast its own shadow. The culmination of my academic machine life was on a beautiful May afternoon. The air smelled like new beginnings and freshly mown grass, a sharp contrast to the stale, recycled air of the library basements where I had lived for 4 solid years. I sat there in my cap and gown, my name printed in the commencement program, with 2 Latin words next to it that had cost me my youth summa cum laude, with highest honor. It was the result of a double major in business and communications. It was the result of 4 years of relentless, agonizing work, of all-night study sessions, fueled by black coffee and a burning desperation. 4 years of sacrificing any semblance of a social life, all compressed into this single validating phrase. When they called my name Amara Denise Peterson, the applause sounded distant and hollow in the vast stadium. I walked across the stage, my hand shaking just slightly as I accepted the heavy crimson leatherette diploma folder. I scanned the massive crowd, a sea of smiling faces and cheering families, searching for the only faces that mattered. They were there. I finally spotted them in section 112. My father, Walter, was visibly checking his watch, his brow furrowed. My mother, Denise, was fanning herself with the program, her eyes wandering. And Bianca was predictably adjusting the strap of her sundress and talking animatedly to my mother, clearly bored. They were present, but they were not there. They were fulfilling an obligation, ticking a box. The distraction, even in this, my supposed moment of triumph, was a familiar, acidic sting. Later, we went to a formal Italian restaurant downtown, the kind my parents only chose for what they deemed special occasions. I clutched the diploma folder in my lap, the weight of it a comfort. This was it. This was the undeniable proof. They could not ignore this. This was not a spelling bee ribbon. This was summa cum laude. We were seated at a round table. I carefully placed the crimson folder on the empty chair beside me, angled just enough so they could see the university crest embossed in gold. It was a physical object heavy with symbolism, a testament to my sacrifice. For a moment there was a lull as we opened our menus. "Well, that's done," my father said, clearing his throat. "Congratulations, Amara." "The ceremony was very long, wasn't it?" my mother added, not as a question but as a statement of fact. She smiled a brief, thin smile that did not reach her eyes. Before I could even respond, before I could talk about my thesis or the job offer, I was already considering. My mother turned her entire body toward Bianca. Her face, moments ago tired and polite, suddenly lit up with a genuine, brilliant energy I had not seen directed at me all day. "Bianca, honey," my mother gushed, "tell your father the big news, the exciting news." Bianca giggled, tossing her blonde hair over her shoulder. "Oh, it's really nothing. But you know that guy I met last week, Jeremy? Well, he invited me to the Andersons' party at their lake house this weekend." My mother gasped, her hand flying to her chest. "The Andersons? As in the boat manufacturing Andersons?" "They are one of the wealthiest families in the area," my father added. He put his menu down on the table, his full attention. His focused accountant's gaze now locked on Bianca. He had not given me that level of undivided attention once during the entire graduation ceremony. "Can you believe it?" My mother continued, her voice high with excitement. "Bianca got invited. Jeremy must really, really like her. Oh, Bianca, what are you going to wear? We must go shopping tomorrow." I sat there frozen. The crimson diploma folder on the chair beside me suddenly felt like a prop from a play nobody was watching. It was a tangible object proof of 4 years of intellectual rigor, and in that instant, it became completely and utterly invisible. It was a ghost at the table. The familiar cold hollowness spread through my chest, a sensation I knew too well. The air in my lungs turned to ice. 4 years of summa cum laude, 4 years of thesis defense, academic honors, and sleepless nights. And it was all erased, rendered meaningless by a single party invitation. A party Bianca did not earn, extended by a boy she barely knew, to a lake house owned by people she had never met. My accomplishment was work. Hers was proximity to wealth. And in my family's eyes, her achievement, her validation was the one worth celebrating. I did not exist. My mother and Bianca spent the next 20 minutes dissecting the social importance of the Anderson family and debating what this invitation meant for Bianca's future. I looked down at my hands, clenching them into fists in my lap to stop them from shaking. I refused to cry. I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing my disappointment. Across the table, my brother Andre, who was just 16 at the time, caught my eye. He was always more perceptive than our parents gave him credit for. He saw me. He saw the diploma on the chair. He saw the swift, calculated dismissal from our parents. He looked at me, then at them, and with a look of quiet resignation, he gave me a subtle, almost imperceptible thumbs up under the table. It was a tiny gesture, a silent acknowledgement from the only other person in the family who understood the dynamic. It was the only real congratulations I received that day. But it was not enough. That single quiet gesture from my brother solidified my resolve, but the rest of the dinner cemented my decision. The validation I craved from my parents was a mirage. It was a goalpost they would move every single time I got close. I had achieved the highest possible honor their university system could bestow, and it still was not enough to hold their attention for more than 30 seconds. That night, I went back to my empty dorm room, surrounded by packing boxes. I looked at the acceptance letter I had received from the marketing firm in Chicago. I had been hesitant to accept it to move 900 miles away. But sitting at that dinner table, feeling the suffocating weight of my own invisibility, I knew I had to go. It was not a choice anymore. It was a necessity. I had to leave Minnesota. I had to leave their orbit. I had to go somewhere where my accomplishments were not measured against my sister's social calendar. I had to build something for myself. Something so solid, so real, and so completely mine that they could never ignore it, overlook it, or give the credit for it to someone else. I was going to Chicago. I was going to build a fortress. My new life in Chicago was an act of deliberate erasure. I arrived on a humid July afternoon with 2 suitcases, a check for my first month's rent on a shared apartment, and a ferocious, desperate hunger. I threw myself into the marketing firm. My first 2 years were a blur of 60-hour work weeks. My life was not glamorous. It was not Michigan Avenue shopping sprees or sophisticated rooftop bars. It was a tiny, cramped apartment in Logan Square, shared with 2 other women. It was rice and beans for dinner night after night. It was taking the L train at 6 in the morning when the cars were cold and returning well after 10 at night. I lived like a monk, frugal and relentlessly focused. I became a ghost at social functions. Every promotion, every raise, every hard-earned bonus was not for comfort. It was fuel. Every extra dollar went into a high-yield savings account I labeled Fortress. I was climbing the corporate ladder, yes, but only because it was the fastest way to get the capital I needed to build my walls. I was not just building a career. I was building an arsenal. I was starving myself of small comforts to buy my ultimate sanctuary. During my rare obligatory holiday visits back to Minnesota, my choices were met with baffled, quiet skepticism. Why marketing Amara? My father Walter would ask, frowning over his dinner plate. His accountant mind could not process it. It seemed so frivolous. You had the grades for law school. Or accounting. That's a stable future. His voice always carried the implication that I had chosen a lesser path, something unstable and flashy, something that could disappear overnight. Meanwhile, Bianca, who had officially dropped out of community college after 2 semesters, was celebrated. She had managed to get a part-time job answering phones at a high-end boutique, a job our mother had arranged through a friend. "Our Bianca just has a gift for networking," my mother Denise would gush. "She knows how to connect with the right people. She is so resourceful." Her failure was reframed as a social triumph. My tangible success, my promotions, my 6-figure salary was treated as a questionable, frivolous life choice. The dynamic had not changed. It had only solidified. For 10 years, I sacrificed. I dated occasionally, but nothing serious developed. I was too focused, too driven, too damaged, perhaps. Then 2 years ago, I met Elias. Elias was different. He was stable. He was an architect, a man who understood structure and design in a way I understood branding and strategy. He was kind, patient, and he seemed to love me for my intensity, not in spite of it. He was by all accounts a good man. We got engaged 6 months ago. He represented a normal shared future, a future I cautiously allowed myself to believe I wanted. The problem was my obsession. He called it your house project. He saw it as a hobby, a very expensive goal. He did not see it as a lifeline. He did not understand the decade of deprivation that fueled it. He did not understand the psychological necessity of it. To him, our future was something we would build together, a logical merging of assets. He lived in a comfortable condo he already owned. He came from a family that praised him. He had never known the feeling of being invisible in his own home. He had never had his highest achievements erased by a party invitation. The conflict came to a head one rainy Tuesday evening. We were looking at spreadsheets on his laptop, idly planning a wedding budget. Elias was typing, and he suddenly went quiet. He turned the laptop toward me. "Amara," he said, his voice gentle but strained. "I was looking at our combined assets for the mortgage pre-approval. This savings account, the one you call Fortress, it has over $50,000 in it." I nodded, not understanding the problem. "Yes, I'm almost there. Another 6 months, maybe." He took a deep breath, the kind of breath a man takes before he delivers difficult news. "Honey, I love you, but $50,000, that is a massive down payment. That is our entire wedding. We could take that right now, add it to the equity from my condo, and buy an amazing house together in Oak Park. A beautiful 4-bedroom. We could start our life." I stared at him. A cold, familiar disappointment settled deep in my stomach, so heavy it felt like I had swallowed stones. He did not get it. He did not get it at all. He saw my lifeline as a contribution. He saw my sanctuary as a joint asset. He saw we and us, and together. He could not see the deep, gaping wound that this money was meant to stitch closed. He could not see the ghosts I was running from. "Elias," I said slowly, forcing my voice to remain calm, forcing the tremor out of it. "That money is not for our house. It is for my house." His face fell. The genuine confusion in his eyes hurt more than an argument would have. "What, Amara, we are getting married. What is yours is mine. What is the difference?" The difference. The difference was everything. The difference was the spelling bee ribbon on the counter. The difference was the crimson diploma folder on the chair. The difference was 10 years of biting my tongue while Bianca was praised for breathing. The difference was knowing that if everything else in my life fell apart, if he left me, if my job disappeared, I needed one place on earth that was mine, a place I had earned, a place no one could minimize, ignore, or take away from me. "It is not for us, Elias," I said, my voice hardening the wall going up. "It is for me. I need this, alone." He looked at me as if I had just confessed a deep betrayal. And in that moment I realized that even the man I loved, this good, stable, kind man, was just one more person who had asked me to sacrifice my fundamental needs for the sake of a shared normal expectation. I turned away from the laptop. I needed that house more than ever. The spring after my tense conversation with Elias was a blur of calculated action. Our engagement felt fragile, suspended in a state of mutual misunderstanding. He was waiting for me to compromise to fold my dream into his. It only made me move faster. I doubled my appointments with my realtor, Tanya. Tanya was a small, sharp woman in expensive blazers, a shark who smelled opportunity and weakness with equal skill. She was exactly what I needed. She understood investment properties, closing costs, and competitive bids. She did not need to understand escape, and I never bothered to explain it. I was her most difficult client. I knew exactly what I wanted, and it was not what she was used to selling. I had a specific vision, a non-negotiable list. I need a craftsman, Tanya, I told her, sipping bitter coffee in her sterile office. Something with character, something built before 1950. I did not say I need a house that feels like a hug I never received. I said I need a real front porch wide enough for a swing and a small yard where I can plant a garden. I did not say I need a piece of earth that is exclusively mine, something I can nurture and watch grow, something that cannot lie or manipulate or be taken away, something that will just be. We must have seen 20, maybe 30 properties, sterile gray boxes in new subdivisions with zero lot lines and hollow interior doors, modern condos and glass towers that felt like upgraded dorm rooms. Nothing felt right. Nothing felt like a fortress. Then, on a bright, windy Saturday in April, she pulled up to a street I had never seen before, lined with massive, mature oak trees that formed a canopy over the road. "This one is a stretch, Amara," she warned, checking her phone. "It's old, really old, and it needs work, but it has your character." It was a 1920s craftsman bungalow set back from the sidewalk. The paint on the green shutters was peeling and the stone steps leading to the porch were uneven. But the porch was there, wide and deep. The house had bones. I stepped inside and the air changed. The house was still thick with the quiet smell of old wood plaster and history. And then I saw it. The ceiling in the entryway was high, easily 12 feet, with the original unpainted crown molding still intact. To the left of the door was the living room, and flanking a solid, imposing brick fireplace were two perfect, deep floor-to-ceiling built-in bookshelves. And the light. It was a true craftsman. The iconic windows were everywhere, tall single-pane rectangles that let in streams of pure, unfiltered golden light. The light pooled on the hardwood floors, which were scuffed and scratched, but they were real oak. My chest tightened. My breath caught. Tanya was saying something about the kitchen being outdated, about the wiring probably needing an upgrade. I did not hear her. This was it. This was the place. This was the fortress I had been building in my head for 10 years. I could already see my books on those shelves. I could see myself curled up by that fireplace on a cold Chicago night safe. This was the room I had been fighting for my entire life. This was the sanctuary. "This is the one," I said, my voice quiet but firm. Tanya stopped mid-sentence, and a slow smile spread across her face. The shark smelled blood. The negotiation was a brutal 10-day war. The house had been in the same family for 60 years, and they were emotionally attached. The inspection found exactly what Tanya had predicted, old wiring and plumbing that needed a complete overhaul. The furnace was ancient. My father called twice during that week, his voice full of cautious skepticism. "Are you sure you are being smart about this, Amara? That sounds like a lot of risk for one person." Elias, hearing the stress in my voice, offered again. "We could get this, Amara. Easy. Just let me move my condo equity over. We could handle these repairs with no loan." His offer was a life raft, and I knew he meant it kindly, but it felt like a trap. It felt like another compromise, another merging, another way for my achievement to be diluted. "No," I said to both of them. "I will handle it." I liquidated a stock account I had been saving for retirement, a move that made my stomach clench. I made a final offer. Slightly below their asking price, but with a promise to close in 14 days, all cash for the repairs, and a letter I wrote to the sellers about the bookshelves and the golden light. It worked. The closing process was an out-of-body experience. I sat at a long, polished table in a sterile downtown office, a place that felt like my own firm. I signed my name, Amara Denise Peterson, over and over and over again until my wrist ached. My hand was shaking not from fatigue but from a deep, vibrating adrenaline. When the last paper was signed, the seller's agent slid a small, simple set of 2 brass keys across the table. I picked them up. They were still warm from his hand, surprisingly heavy, and absolutely real. I clutched them in my palm so tightly that the teeth of the keys left sharp imprints on my skin. I welcomed the pain. "Congratulations, Amara," Tanya said, giving me a rare, genuine smile. "You are officially a homeowner." I did not go back to my apartment. I did not call Elias. I did not call my parents. I drove straight to the bungalow. My bungalow. I parked at the curb and just stared at it for what felt like an hour. With a hand that trembled, I walked up the uneven stone steps, put my key in the lock, and turned. The click of the tumbler turning over was the loudest, most beautiful, most definitive sound I had ever heard. I pushed the door open. I stepped inside. The house was empty. My footsteps echoed on the bare hardwood floors. The silence was absolute, but it was not the cold, lonely silence of my shared apartment. It was the rich, deep, resonant silence of possibility. It was the sound of peace. That night, I drove back to my apartment, grabbed the air mattress from my closet, and drove back. I inflated it in the middle of what would be my bedroom, the room with the best light. I lay down on it fully clothed and stared up at the high ceiling. I was 32 years old. I was a homeowner. I was alone in my fortress, and for the first time in my entire hollow, striving life, I felt completely, perfectly, and unshakably safe. The next morning, I woke on the air mattress to the sound of birds and the sight of that golden, unfiltered light streaming through the dirty windows. The house was empty, yes, but I realized it was not empty. It was full. It was full of potential. It was a blank canvas, and for the first time in my life, I was the only artist. I was the one holding the brush. The renovation became my entire world for the next 2 months. I cashed in my 2 weeks of vacation time, stacked them with 2 long weekends, and began the physical labor. Elias offered to help, of course. He offered to call contractors to bring his architect friends over. His offers were practical and kind, and they felt like another invasion. "No," I told him, my voice firm. "This part I have to do alone." He did not understand, but he respected it. He stayed away. My family did not call, and I was grateful for the silence. It was just me in the house. I started with the walls with the act of definition. The previous owners had lived in a world of peeling floral wallpaper and a dull, sterile eggshell white. It was the color of hospitals and indecision. It had to go. I spent 4 days just scraping, steaming, and sanding. My shoulders burned, my hands cramped. Then I primed every single surface, erasing the past, until the entire house was a stark, bright uniform white. It was a fresh start. Then came the color. My color. I painted the living room, the room with the fireplace and the built-in bookshelves, a deep, calming sage green. It was the color of peace, of quiet forests, of stability. I painted the dining room a warm, inviting terracotta. It was the color of earth, of spice, of the family dinners I had always craved, but never truly had. My bedroom became a serene, smoky blue-gray, the color of the Chicago sky just before dawn, a promise of a new day. Each stroke of the roller, each careful cut of the brush along the ceiling was an affirmation. I was not just painting walls. I was painting over the beige silence of my childhood. I was choosing my own environment. I was deciding what a home should feel like. The hardest job was the floors. The beautiful oak was hidden under 60 years of scuffed scratches and a dull, waxy buildup. I rented a heavy industrial drum sander from the hardware store, a massive roaring beast of a machine that I could barely control. The first hour it gouged the wood, and I sat on the floor and cried in frustration. But I got up. I watched 12 different online tutorials. I learned to move with the machine, not against it. For 3 days, the house was filled with a hurricane of noise and fine choking sawdust that covered every surface. My entire body ached. My lower back screamed in protest. My arms felt like they were vibrating even when I was asleep. This was not a pleasant task. It was an exorcism. I was stripping away every heel mark, every stain, every memory that was not mine. The machine did not care about my feelings. It did not care if I was tired. It only respected effort. I understood that. And then it was done. I vacuumed up the last of the dust. I got on my hands and knees and wiped the raw, pale wood clean. When I applied the first coat of semi-gloss polyurethane, the transformation was immediate and breathtaking. The grain of the oak exploded with color, a deep, rich honey gold. The scuffs were gone. The scratches were gone. All that was left was the beautiful, solid, undeniable truth of the wood underneath. When the golden afternoon light hit that floor, it glowed. I had earned that glow. The kitchen was my final, most personal project. The inspection had confirmed the wiring and plumbing needed a professional, a cost I had grimly factored in. I splurged on a licensed plumber and a master electrician to make the house safe to replace the ancient fuse box with a modern circuit breaker panel. That was non-negotiable. But the rest, the aesthetics, that was all me. The original cabinets were solid wood just covered in a hideous dark brown stain. I did not have the budget to replace them, so I decided to save them. I spent an entire week sanding, priming, and painting them a crisp, immaculate white. The change was astonishing. The dark, cramped room instantly felt bright and open. I installed new hardware myself, heavy brushed nickel knobs and pulls that felt substantial in my hand. Each turn of the screwdriver was a small, satisfying click of realignment. I put in a new backsplash, a simple white subway tile, a skill I learned from the internet. My one true splurge was the sink. I had always dreamed of a deep white farmhouse sink. It was impractical. It was heavy. It was an extravagant expense, and I bought it. Watching the plumber finally fit that massive porcelain basin into the new countertops was a moment of pure, selfish joy. This house was not about being practical for someone else. It was not about fulfilling someone else's expectations of what a 32-year-old woman should be saving for. Every drop of sweat that ran down my face during those 2 months was an affirmation. Every muscle that ached was a testament. I was not just fixing a house. I was fixing myself. I was proving to the girl who clutched the spelling bee ribbon that she was in fact capable. I was proving to the college graduate with the invisible diploma that her labor had tangible, beautiful results. Each nail I hammered to secure a piece of trim was a boundary I was setting. It was a clear, sharp, definitive no to the world that said I was not enough, and a resounding yes to myself. By early September, the house was no longer a construction site. It was a home, my home. The 2 months of relentless labor had transformed the empty, neglected bungalow into a space that felt like a physical extension of my own mind. My books, hundreds of them, were finally free from their cardboard boxes, filling the built-in bookshelves next to the fireplace. They were organized by subject and author, a library of my own thoughts and passions. Plants breathed life into every corner, ferns and ivy thriving in the golden light from the craftsman windows. The comfortable furniture I had slowly acquired was arranged for conversation, for reading, for living. This was the first space in my entire 32 years that was truly mine. It was not a shared apartment with mismatched dishes. It was not a dorm room. It was not the beige, conditional space of my childhood. Every color on the walls, every fixture, every refinished floorboard was a decision. I had made a choice that reflected my own taste, my own labor, my own vision. The housewarming party felt like the only logical conclusion. It was the perfect way to celebrate this milestone, to fill the house with laughter and joy, to officially mark this new chapter. I wanted to share my accomplishment with the people I cared about. I wanted them to see what I had built. I did not send a casual text or an email. I went to a specialty paper store and bought thick, cream-colored cardstock and matching envelopes. This was a formal celebration of my life's greatest work. I spent an entire evening handwriting each invitation with a black fountain pen. I wrote personal notes on each one. To my friends Simone and Leon, who had listened to me cry in frustration over the sanding. To my colleagues who had covered for me when I left early for contractor meetings. Then I prepared the invitations for my family. This was different. This was not just an invitation. It was a plea. It was an olive branch. I went through an old box of photographs I had taken from Minnesota, a box I had not opened in years. I found a picture of me, Andre, and Bianca as children sitting on the steps of that beige house, squinting into the sun. I found another one of all of us, my parents included, at a 4th of July barbecue, a rare moment of relaxed, candid joy. I included these photos in the invitations for my parents for Bianca and for Andre. On the card for my parents, I wrote, "This house is the proudest accomplishment of my life. Having you here to see it would mean the world to me." I mailed them 2 weeks before the party date, then followed up with texts to make sure they had all received them. The response was immediate, and it filled me with a cautious, dangerous hope. My mother Denise called me that same evening, her voice warmer than I had heard it in years. "Amara, sweetheart, this invitation is just lovely. The old photo, it made me cry. Of course we will be there. We wouldn't miss it for the world. Your father and I are just so proud of you for buying your own home." My heart swelled. Proud. She had used the word proud. A few hours later, a text from Bianca lit up my phone. "OMG, sis. Can't wait to see your new place. By the way, I just bought a new car. Nothing fancy like your house, but I'm excited. LOL." I read the message 3 times. It was classic Bianca. Even in a message of congratulations, she had to pivot the spotlight back to herself. A new car. It was a subtle, almost imperceptible jab, a reminder that she too had accomplishments. I felt the familiar dull sting of her competitive nature, but I brushed it aside. I would not let her diminish this. I chose to focus on the first sentence. "Can't wait to see your new place." She was coming. That was what mattered. The next day, my brother Andre called. Unlike Bianca's text, his interest felt genuine. "Amara, this is amazing. A 1920s craftsman. Seriously, did you really refinish the floors yourself? What grit sandpaper did you have to use? And the kitchen, did you keep the original cabinets?" He asked detailed, intelligent questions about the very labor I had poured my soul into. "I'm so excited to see it. I have a housewarming gift I've been working on for you. I'll bring it to the party." I hung up the phone, my hands shaking just slightly. This was it. This was the moment I had been working toward for a decade. My mother was proud. My brother was impressed. Even Bianca was coming. The hollow feeling I had carried since that graduation dinner, the icy invisibility, it began to thaw. I stood in my new sage green living room, surrounded by the physical proof of my success. This was not a report card they could glance at and forget. This was not a diploma they could ignore in favor of a party invitation. This was a house, a solid, tangible, undeniable achievement. They could not overlook this. They could not minimize it. They would walk through these rooms, they would see the work, they would feel the stability of it. For the first time in my life, I allowed myself to fully believe, this time will be different. This time, they will finally see me. I woke up before my alarm at exactly 6 a.m. I did not need the alarm. My excitement was a current of electricity in my veins pulling me from sleep. For a second, I was disoriented, reaching for the floor, expecting the familiar plastic squeak of the air mattress. Instead, my feet met the solid, smooth, refinished oak floor of my bedroom. Sunlight streamed through the blue-gray curtains, casting a warm, buttery glow across the room. Today was the day. Today, my house, my fortress, would become a home filled with laughter, congratulations, and the people I loved most. I went straight to my kitchen, my bright white kitchen with the farmhouse sink I had fought for. This was the command center. By 9:30 a.m., my counters were covered, a testament to my planning. I had been baking since the night before. My specialty mini lemon tarts sat in perfect, precise rows on a cooling rack. The scent filled the room, a sharp, clean smell of citrus zest and browning, buttery pastry. These tarts were the one thing my mother Denise had always, without fail, praised me for. They had to be perfect. I moved on to the savory. In the food processor, I blended chickpeas, roasted garlic, and tahini, adding ice water to make the homemade hummus impossibly creamy. The sharp smell of the garlic and lemon juice cut through the sweet pastry scent. I arranged a massive charcuterie board on the new dining room sideboard, a landscape of cured meats, carefully selected cheeses, artisanal crackers, and dark glossy olives. I pulled spinach and feta puff pastry pinwheels from the oven, the smell rich and savory. This was not just food. This was a presentation. This was a statement of care, of adulthood, of capability. At 10 o'clock, the doorbell chimed. My friends Simone and Leon arrived exactly on time, their arms full of flowers and a celebratory bottle of champagne. They had volunteered to help with the final preparations. Simone, my closest friend from the marketing firm, spun around in the middle of my living room, her mouth open. "Amara, this is not a house. This is a magazine," she exclaimed, her voice bouncing off the high ceilings. "I cannot believe this is the same place you showed me 3 months ago. You did this. You did this yourself." Leon walked straight to the fireplace, running his hand over the brick and the built-in bookshelves. "This is stunning, Amara. Truly. The color on these walls. That sage green is perfect. You have an amazing eye. And these floors, they look brand new." Their praise was a warm, comforting balm. It was genuine. It was immediate. They saw the work. They saw me in the details. They helped me arrange the flowers in vases, and Leon, a secret mixologist, took charge of setting up the bar area. At 11 o'clock, Elias arrived, my fiancé. He looked handsome, wearing a crisp linen shirt I had bought him, and he carried a large, expensive-looking orchid, but his smile was tight. I saw it instantly, the tension in his jaw. He kissed me, but it was a quick, dry peck on the cheek, his eyes already scanning the room, taking in the food, the flowers, the music. "Wow," he said, and it did not sound like a compliment. It sounded like an assessment. You really went all out, Amara." He set the orchid down on the counter almost as an afterthought. I smiled, trying to ignore the knot that had suddenly formed in my stomach. "It's a big day. I told you. I'm excited." He sighed a small, barely audible puff of air and ran a hand through his hair. I know you are. It feels like a lot. You're making a big deal out of this, Amara. It is just a party. It is just a party." The words landed like small, sharp stones. He did not get it. After all these months, after all our conversations, after he had seen me covered in sawdust and paint, he still did not get it. He saw this as a social gathering. I saw it as my graduation, my wedding, and my coronation, all rolled into one. It was the physical manifestation of 10 years of my life's work. It was the moment my family would finally, undeniably have to see my worth. To him, it was just a lot. I forced the smile to stay on my face. "It's important to me, Elias. Let's just leave it at that." I turned away from him, his misunderstanding a cold spot in the warm room. I could not deal with him right now. Not today. Today was not about him. It was about them. By noon, everything was perfect. The house gleamed. Soft jazz played through the speakers I had installed. The food was artfully arranged. The flowers from Simone and Leon brightened every room. I stood in the entryway, taking a deep breath, smoothing the front of my dress. Everything was ready. I was ready. The house was perfect. The last lemon tart was dusted with powdered sugar. The jazz music was a soft, sophisticated murmur in the background. Elias was pouring himself a glass of water, his earlier tension having settled into a quiet, watchful neutrality. I was smoothing my dress, checking my reflection in the hallway mirror, when my phone buzzed on the entryway table. It was 2:15 p.m. Guests would be arriving in 30 minutes. I glanced at the screen. An unknown Chicago number. My first instinct was to ignore it. It was probably a spam call. But the years of being the responsible one, the fixer, were a hard habit to break. What if it was a guest who was lost? What if something was wrong? I picked it up. "This is Amara," I said, my voice bright and professional. "Is this Ms. Amara Peterson?" A man's voice asked low and gravelly. It was not a friendly voice. "Yes." "Who is this?" I asked, my smile faltering. "This is Robert Tilsdale from Tilsdale Properties. I'm the landlord for the building on North Milwaukee. I'm calling about your brother, Andre Peterson." My blood went cold. A landlord. "My brother, is everything okay?" "No, ma'am, it is not," he said, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. "I'm calling because you are listed as the financial guarantor on his lease for apartment 4B. A laugh sharp and nervous escaped my throat. "I'm sorry, Mr. Tilsdale, there must be a mistake. I never co-signed a lease for my brother." There was a rustle of papers on his end, then a heavy sigh. Well, ma'am, I'm holding a lease agreement that was faxed to us, along with a copy of your credit report, with what appears to be your signature right here. And the reason I'm calling you the guarantor is that your brother is 3 months past due on his rent. We're talking $2,700 in arrears. We've been trying to reach him for weeks with no success. I leaned against the wall, the sage green paint suddenly feeling icy cold against my back. 3 months, $2,700. The numbers did not compute. That's right, he said. And frankly, Ms. Peterson, we're moving to eviction proceedings. But I look at this file and I see your credit is perfect and his is not. And to be perfectly honest, the signature on this guarantee form looks a little different from the one on your credit application. It looks a lot like he may have forged your signature on the lease itself, which is fraud. I'm calling you as a professional courtesy before we escalate this. Fraud, forged, eviction. The words clinical and sharp cut through the soft jazz music. They sliced through the scent of lemon tarts and fresh flowers. The entire perfect, beautiful day tilted. My fortress, my sanctuary had just been violated from the inside by my own blood. Not now. Not today. My carefully constructed celebration felt like a thin sheet of glass, and this man's voice was a hammer. I will handle this, I said, my voice a strangled whisper. I will call you back. I ended the call, my hand shaking so violently I almost dropped the phone. Elias was watching me from the kitchen, his brow furrowed in concern. Amara, what is it? You look like you've seen a ghost. I held up a hand, silencing him. I could not talk to him. Not about this. I immediately dialed Andre's number. It rang once, twice. He picked up, his voice impossibly sickeningly cheerful. Hey sis, happy housewarming. I'm just getting in the car. I'm on my way. Andre, I said, and my voice was not my own. It was a low, cold, dangerous thing. I just got a call from your landlord, Robert Tillsdale. The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. It was a vacuum. The cheerful, breezy brother was gone, replaced by a trapped animal. He says, I continued, my voice shaking with a cold rage, that you are 3 months late on rent. He says you owe him $2,700. He says you forged my signature on the lease. A long, terrible, suffocating pause. I heard him take a shaky breath. Amara, he whispered. Amara, I can explain. Can you? I hissed, my volume dangerously low. Can you explain forgery, Andre? Can you explain fraud? Using my perfect credit, a credit I bled for, to lie. I'm so sorry, Amara. He rushed out, his voice cracking. I lost my biggest freelance client. I got behind. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. I knew your credit was perfect. I was going to pay it back before you ever found out. I swear. I just got my first paycheck from the new design job. I can start paying it back. Please, please don't tell Mom and Dad. Please, Amara. He was crying now, sobbing into the phone. I'm still coming to the party, he pleaded. I have to come. I'll bring the gift I made you. We can talk then. I will explain everything in person. Please, Amara. I'm so sorry. I ended the call. I did not say okay. I did not say anything. I stood in my perfect entryway in my beautiful new home and felt the familiar bitter acid of betrayal rise in my throat. My own brother, the one who had sounded so genuinely impressed. The one who had given me that thumbs up at my graduation dinner. He had used me. He had lied to me. He had put my financial security, the very foundation of this house, at risk. The anxiety I felt before the nervous hope about my family's arrival was gone. It was replaced by a dark, heavy dread. Andre's arrival was no longer a celebration. It was a confrontation. My family's presence was no longer just about seeking validation. It was about navigating a new, sickening secret. The party, my perfect shining moment of triumph, was now tainted, stained by a betrayal that had happened long before the first guest had even rung the bell. I had to put the phone call with Andre's landlord into a box in my mind. I had to lock it. I had no other choice. The doorbell rang at exactly 2:45 p.m., and my role as the happy, triumphant hostess began. My colleagues from the marketing firm were the first to arrive bearing bottles of expensive wine and wide, genuine smiles. They marveled at the kitchen, at the new farmhouse sink, at the subway tile I had set myself. "Amara, you have a gift," my boss Maria said, squeezing my arm. "This is incredible." My neighbors from across the street came next, bringing a beautiful potted orchid that put Elias's hurried gift to shame. My book club members followed then, my yoga class friends, then Simone and Leon. By 3:15, my house was gloriously, wonderfully full. The sage-green living room was buzzing with the energy I had dreamed of. Laughter bounced off the high ceilings. People gathered around the charcuterie board in the terracotta dining room, complimenting the homemade hummus and my mini lemon tarts. It was perfect. It was everything I had planned, and I was miserable. I was a ghost at my own party. I smiled. I refilled wine glasses. I accepted compliments on the refinished floors. But my body was rigid, strung tight with a terrible vibrating anxiety. Every compliment felt hollow. Every laugh sounded distant. My entire being was focused on two things: the clock on the mantelpiece and the front door. 3:20. They should have been here by now. The drive from Minnesota was long, but they would have left this morning. 3:25. Maybe they hit traffic around the city. Yes, that must be it. At 3:30 p.m., Elias found me. I was standing near the front window pretending to look at the garden, but really I was staring at the empty driveway, at the sidewalk, at every car that slowed down. "Amara," he said, his voice low and tight. He put his hand on my arm. It was not a comforting gesture. It was a controlling one. "What are you doing?" "They're not here," I whispered, my eyes scanning the street. "It's 3:30. My mom said they wouldn't miss it." Elias let out a heavy, frustrated sigh, the kind of sigh that said, "You are being difficult." "Amara, relax. Seriously, they probably hit traffic just like you said they would. They'll get here. You are being wound up over nothing." I turned to look at him, the anxiety from Andre's fraud, and a lifetime of disappointment churning in my stomach. "It's not nothing, Elias. You know this day. You know it's important to me. And you are letting it ruin the party," he hissed, his eyes darting around to see if any guests were watching us. "Look at this. Your friends are here. Your boss is here. Everyone is having a great time, and you are standing by the window looking like someone just died. You need to stop this. Go talk to people. Be present. Don't let your family drama ruin this for everyone else." For everyone else. His words hit me like a physical blow. Not, "I understand you're hurt." Not, "I'm sorry, I know this is hard for you." It was, "Your feelings are an inconvenience. Your pain is a social embarrassment. Stop it." He was not my partner. He was not my ally. He was a spectator concerned only with the optics of the event. He was trying to manage my emotions, to push them down, to make them go away because they were making him uncomfortable. He was in that moment, just like my father, demanding that I be the responsible one, the one who never caused a problem, the one who swallowed her own pain for the sake of appearances. The crack between us, the one that had formed over the savings account, widened into a chasm. I pulled my arm away from his hand. "I need to check on the food," I said, my voice as cold and brittle as ice. I walked away from him. At 4 o'clock, the party was at its peak. The anxiety was no longer a vibration. It was a gaping hole in the middle of my living room, a void that was sucking all the warmth and joy out of the air. They were not stuck in traffic. An hour and a half. They were not coming. I could not stand it anymore. I slipped into the hallway leading to my bedroom, away from the noise, my heart hammering against my ribs. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking. I called my mother, Denise. I listened to the phone ring. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It went to her cheerful sing-song voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Denise. I can't get to the phone right now, but leave a message." I hung up. I could not speak. I opened my text messages. I sent one to my mother. "Hey, are you on your way? We've started already. Is everything okay?" Then I opened my text chain with Andre, the one where he had begged for my forgiveness just 2 hours ago. My thumbs were stiff. "Where are you? You said you were coming. Is everything okay?" I stared at the screen. The message to my mother was delivered. The message to Andre was delivered. Neither was read. No one was answering. The cold dread from the landlord, the sting of Elias's dismissal, and the familiar sickening icy realization that I had been abandoned again, all merged into a wave of pure nausea. I had to take a deep breath, push the box in my mind closed, and force the mask of the happy hostess back onto my face. I walked back out into the laughter. I was in the middle of a conversation with my boss Maria and two of my colleagues. I was describing the nightmare of sanding the hardwood floors, and they were laughing at my description of the beastly drum sander. I was smiling. It was a real smile for a moment. I was proud of the story. I was proud of the floor beneath our feet, and in that brief, genuine moment of connection, my phone resting on the kitchen counter 20 feet away buzzed. I did not hear it. But Elias, who was standing near it, picked it up and looked at the screen. "Amara," he called out, his voice neutral. "You have a text from Nia." I excused myself from the conversation, my heart giving a strange, nervous flutter. Nia was my friend who was sick. Maybe she was checking in. I walked over, took the phone from Elias, and opened the message. It was 4:30 p.m. The text message read, "Hey girl, feeling awful, so sorry I'm missing it. Weirdest thing. I just drove past Hamilton Auto on my way back from Walgreens. I saw your whole family, your parents Andre and Bianca. She was posing for pictures next to a bright red convertible. It had one of those giant bows on it, like giant. They all looked so happy. Figured they were heading to your place after. See you soon." I read the message. My smile, the real one from a moment before, froze on my face. It felt like it was cracking like a layer of thin ice. I read the words again. Hamilton Auto, your whole family, bright red convertible, giant bow. They all looked so happy. The warmth of the crowded room, the smell of the lemon tarts and fresh coffee, the sound of the soft jazz, all of it just evaporated. It was sucked into a vacuum. A glacial, numbing cold spread from my sternum outward, prickling down my arms and into my hands until my fingers felt stiff. They had not forgotten. There was no accident. There was no highway closure. There was no family emergency. They were at a car dealership. My mother, who was so proud. My brother, who was so sorry about the $2,700 of fraud he had committed against me. My father, my sister. They were at 4:30 p.m., 2.5 hours after my party started, at a car dealership celebrating Bianca. They had made a choice. My handwritten invitation, the old photograph I had so carefully selected, the plea for them to see my life's work. My 10 years of brutal grinding sacrifice in Chicago, my 2 months of sweat and physical labor, my house, my fortress, my beautiful solid sage green sanctuary. It had been weighed against a shiny red convertible, and it had lost. It was the graduation dinner all over again, but 1,000 times more cruel. This was not a passive dismissal. This was an active, deliberate choice. They had received my invitation. They had confirmed. And then they had collectively decided that Bianca's new purchase was the real event of the day. My brother had forged my name, and my entire family, including him, had abandoned me for a new car. It was a complete systemic betrayal. "Amara, is everything okay?" It was Maria. She had walked over, her smile fading into concern. I looked up from the phone. My face felt numb, like I had been given Novocaine. I tried to rearrange my features into a smile. It felt grotesque. It felt like a snarl. "Yes," I said, my voice sounding thin and strange to my own ears. "Everything is fine, just a work text. You know, always an emergency." She nodded, though she clearly did not believe me. She walked back to the group. I could not breathe. I turned my back to the party and leaned against the counter. My beautiful new counter. I felt like I was going to be sick. "What is it now, Amara?" It was Elias. His voice was not kind, it was not concerned, it was tired, he was annoyed. My pain was once again an inconvenience to his social evening. I did not have the energy to form words. I just held out the phone, my hand shaking, and showed him Nia's text. I watched his face as he read it. I willed him. I pleaded with him in my mind. "Be angry for me. Be on my side. Just this once, be on my side. He read it, and a small, impressed whistle escaped his lips. A convertible. Wow. He handed the phone back to me, shaking his head. Well, that is some seriously bad timing on their part. I stared at him, waiting. That's it, I whispered. Bad timing. He looked at me, his eyes hardening, his patience clearly gone. What do you want me to say, Amara? Yes, it's awful. It's a terrible thing to do. But honestly, it's Bianca. You know exactly how she is. She probably threw a massive tantrum until they all agreed to go with her to the dealership. She's a child. You can't be surprised by this. He was excusing them. He was defending them. He was minimizing my pain and centering Bianca's excitement. Elias, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. They chose a car over my home. And you are choosing to let it ruin this party. He snapped back, his voice a low hiss, glancing to make sure no one could hear. Look at this. The party is a success. Your boss loves the house. Everyone is happy. And you are in the corner again, letting your family drama control you. You are being selfish. Stop it. Put the phone away. Go be a hostess. He didn't get it. He would never get it. He was not my partner. He was not my ally. He was just another warden in a different prison telling me to be quiet and polite and manage my feelings for the comfort of others. In that moment, standing in my perfect kitchen, surrounded by 30 friends and my fiancé in the house that was supposed to be my ultimate victory, I had never in my life felt more profoundly, excruciatingly, and completely alone. For the next 3 hours, I was the perfect automaton. I smiled. I laughed. I accepted congratulations. I talked about paint colors and interest rates. I was a brilliant actress performing the role of the proud, happy homeowner. Elias watched me, a look of cool approval on his face, as if I were a difficult employee who had finally decided to cooperate. He saw my performance, and he mistook it for compliance. He did not see the screaming hollow rage just beneath the surface. By 7 o'clock, guests began to leave. They hugged me, thanking me for a lovely party. Your home is beautiful, Amara, they said one after another. Congratulations again. Thank you so much for coming, I replied, my smile aching, my voice hoarse. It means so much to me. And I meant it. Their presence was the only thing keeping me upright. Elias helped with the goodbyes, the perfect attentive fiancé. So glad you could make it, he would say, clapping men on the back. He had already forgotten our conflict, or more likely had filed it away as Amara being dramatic, problem solved. At 8:30 p.m., the last guest departed. My friend Simone gave me one last long hug at the door. Are you really okay? She whispered, her eyes searching mine. You seemed, distant. I forced the smile one last time. Just tired. So much work. I'm so glad you came. She squeezed my hand and left. I closed the heavy oak door behind her. The click of the deadbolt locking echoed in the entryway. And then silence. A profound, suffocating silence that was louder than all the party's laughter had been. The house, my fortress, which had been so full of life and warmth just an hour ago, was suddenly a vast, empty cavern. It was a stage after the play had ended. I stood in my entryway, surrounded by the evidence of what should have been a perfect day. My eyes landed on the hall table. There, in a neat, hopeful row, sat 4 small gift bags, the ones I had prepared for my family, a locally made candle for my mother, a bottle of small batch whiskey for my father, a leather-bound journal for Andre, a silk scarf I knew Bianca would have loved. They were all unclaimed. They were artifacts of a hope that had been proven foolish. I walked into the terracotta dining room. The beautiful charcuterie board was decimated, but at the head of the table, the 4 special place settings I had laid out for them remained pristine. The good wine glasses I had bought just for this occasion. The cloth napkins I had ironed by hand, untouched, unused. A perfect, heartbreaking memorial to an arrival that never happened. My body began to move, even though my mind was frozen. I started cleaning mechanically. My limbs felt heavy, robotic. I gathered empty glasses, my hands moving with a grim, practiced efficiency. I scraped leftover bits of cheese and meat into the trash. I loaded the dishwasher, the clink of glass on metal sounding sharp and violent in the quiet. With every plate I rinsed, every glass I loaded, the image from Nia's text message burned behind my eyelids. My entire family, happy, posing around a shiny red piece of metal with a bow on it, while I stood here, while my mini lemon tarts, the ones I made for my mother, sat uneaten, while the gift for my fraudster brother waited by the door. The image was a loop, a continuous silent film of my own irrelevance. By 9 o'clock, the house was clean again. But the joy I had felt that morning, the sense of completion had evaporated. It had been sucked out of the rooms, leaving a vacuum in its place. My house, which had been a symbol of my achievement and my independence, suddenly felt empty in a way that had nothing to do with the departed guests. It felt like a hollow shell. I sank onto my new sage green sofa. I finally let the tears I had been holding back, the ones Elias had shamed me for, begin to fall. I reached for a tissue just as my phone, sitting silently on the coffee table, lit up. The screen read, "Dad calling." My heart stopped. It gave a single painful jolt. Hope, that stubborn, stupid, treacherous thing, flickered inside me. Maybe there was an explanation. A real one. Maybe Nia was wrong. Maybe the car was for someone else. Maybe there had been a terrible, awful misunderstanding. Maybe this was the apology. I answered the call, my voice thick with tears I had not had time to wipe away. "Hello," I said, my voice small, desperate. There was a pause, a cold, sharp static on the line. Then my father's voice, not warm, not apologetic, not concerned. It was a voice I had rarely heard, a voice sharp as broken glass and just as cold. "Amara, we need to talk, right now." I sat up straighter on the sofa, wiping the hot, angry tears from my face with the back of my hand. The hope I had felt, that stupid, treacherous flicker, was extinguished, replaced by a cold, sharp dread. His tone was not one of misunderstanding. It was one of accusation. "Talk," I repeated, my voice hoarse. "About what, Dad?" There was another beat of that cold static. Then his voice, devoid of all paternal warmth, cut through the line. "About what you did to your sister." The words hung in the air of my empty, silent living room. I stared unseeing at the beautiful herringbone-patterned tile I had laid in front of the fireplace. It was so absurd, so completely inverted from reality, that for a moment I could not process it. I almost laughed. What I did to Bianca?" I asked, my voice rising in disbelief. "Dad, I did not do anything to her. I have not even seen her in weeks. I have been here in my house waiting for my family, the family that never showed up." "Do not play innocent with me, Amara," my father Walter snapped. His voice was tight with a righteous anger that I knew all too well. It was the voice he used when one of his clients had made a foolish financial error. It was the voice of judgment. "You know exactly what you did. Your mother is in tears. Bianca is devastated." "Devastated?" I said, standing up. The room felt like it was tilting. "Dad, I have no idea what you're talking about. What I do know is that my entire family, my mother, my father, my sister, and my brother, all of you skipped my housewarming party. You did not call, you did not text, you just abandoned me. I found out from a friend that you were all at a car dealership. So you tell me, what could I possibly have done that is worse than that?" There was a pause. For a second I thought my words had gotten through. I thought I heard a flicker of hesitation. But when he spoke again, his voice was even colder, harder. "Your mother is very upset right in this moment," he said, as if I had not spoken. "Bianca showed us the text message you sent her yesterday, the one where you deliberately and maliciously changed the time of your party." I stopped pacing. "What? What text message?" "The text, Amara, the one changing the time from 6 p.m. to 3 p.m., he countered, his voice rising. "She had her appointment at the dealership at 3, an appointment she has been saving for, an appointment she has been looking forward to for months. And you, knowing that, deliberately changed your party time to conflict with it. You tried to force us to choose. Why would you do that, Amara? Are you that jealous of your sister that you had to find a way to ruin her special day?" The accusation was so layered, so specific, so insane, that it left me breathless. I raced through my memory. 6 p.m. The party had never been at 6 p.m. My mind flashed to the cream-colored cardstock, the black fountain pen. The invitation had always said 3 p.m. I had texted Bianca yes, but only to confirm. "Dad, that is not what happened," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I never ever changed the time. The invitation always said 3 o'clock. Check your own invitation." "We do not have the invitation anymore, Amara," he replied, his dismissal a slap in the face. "And that is beside the point." "It is exactly the point," I shouted, my control finally snapping. "It is the entire point. I never changed the time. Bianca is lying to you." "The point," he said, his voice now a low growl, "is that your sister needed her family's support today for her first major achievement, and you tried to force us to choose between you." Her first major achievement. The words echoed in the high-ceilinged room. They seemed to bounce off the new sage green paint. Her first major achievement. A car. A car she probably bought with money they gave her. That was an achievement. My summa cum laude degree. Was that not an achievement? My 10 years of grinding work in a competitive field. My promotion to director. Was that not an achievement? This house. This house that I had literally rebuilt with my own 2 hands. This house I had saved for 10 years to buy. This house I had bought with my own money while my brother was committing fraud in my name. This was not an achievement. This was just nothing. It was just a party to be skipped in favor of a red convertible. The hollowness in my chest, the cold, familiar feeling of being invisible, was suddenly filled with a hot, bright, clarifying rage. "And you need to apologize," my father continued, his voice heavy with command. "Bianca is very hurt by what you did. She is in the other room crying because you tried to sabotage her." Something inside me broke. It was a final critical load-bearing strut, a lifetime of accommodation, a lifetime of swallowing my disappointment, a lifetime of being the responsible one, the quiet one, the one who never complained, the one who just worked harder, hoping one day they would finally see. It all shattered. "No," I said. My voice was quiet, but it was not small. It was the deadliest, most definitive sound I had ever made. "What did you say to me?" my father asked, his voice sharp with shock. I said, "No, I will not apologize. I will not apologize for something I did not do," I said, my voice gaining strength. "Bianca lied to you. I never changed the time of my party. And the fact that all of you just assumed I was the villain, that you did not even bother to call me, that you did not even check with me, that you just believed her, that says everything. It says everything I have ever needed to know." "Do not you talk to me about family, young lady," my father roared, finally losing his own measured control. "We raised you better than this. Your mother is in tears over your behavior." "My behavior!" I shrieked, the tears coming back, but this time they were hot tears of pure, unadulterated rage. "My behavior. I am the one who was left waiting for my family. I am the one who spent 10 years saving for this day. I am the one who was abandoned. You need to think about someone other than yourself for once, Amara." That was it. That was the final fatal blow. "I have spent my entire life," I said, my voice shaking with the force of my own revelation, "thinking about everyone else. I have been the responsible one. I have been the one who never caused problems. I have been the one who worked hard and did everything right, and still Bianca always comes first. She always wins. She lies, she manipulates, and you all just let her." "That is not true," he said, but there was a flicker of hesitation in his voice now, a tiny crack in his conviction. "It is true," I said, "and you know it. I am hanging up now, Dad. I am done with this conversation. When you and Mom are ready to hear the actual truth, you can call me back, but I will not be apologizing." "Amara, do not you dare hang up on." I pressed the red icon. I ended the call. My hand was shaking so violently that I dropped the phone onto the sofa. I stood in the middle of my living room, my sanctuary surrounded by the home I had created, feeling more alone and more free than I ever had in my entire life. I was shaking, my entire body vibrating with the aftermath of the rage and the profound, searing pain. The tears were streaming down my face, hot and uncontrolled. I sank back onto the sofa, the phone still in my trembling hand. I was not just crying, I was fractured. Elias had been standing in the doorway between the living room and the kitchen, a dish towel in his hand. He had been a silent witness to the entire brutal conversation. He had heard my father's accusations. He had heard my defense. He had heard me scream. He walked over slowly, his face a mask of careful, measured concern. He sat down, not next to me, but on the armchair opposite me. He put his elbows on his knees, steepling his fingers. He looked like a therapist. He looked like an architect studying a problem. He did not look like my fiancé.
"Well," he said, his voice quiet, "that was intense." I looked up at him, my vision blurred by the tears. I was desperate. I was a drowning person looking for a hand. He had heard it all. He had heard the insanity of the accusation. He had to be on my side. He had to see the truth. He blamed me. I whispered, my voice breaking. They skipped my party. They abandoned me, and he called to blame me. I waited for the outrage. I waited for him to say, "That is unbelievable," or "He's insane," or "I am so sorry, Amara." Instead, Elias took a long, slow breath. He looked at the floor, then at me. "Amara, listen to me," he said, his voice the epitome of calm, condescending reason. "Just take a breath. You're obviously very emotional right now. You've been under a lot of stress. This party was a huge deal for you." "What?" I said, my tears stopping. A new kind of cold, different from my father's, started to seep into the room. "I'm just saying," he continued, holding up a hand as if to placate a hysterical animal. "Is it possible there was a misunderstanding, a simple miscommunication? You've been juggling a lot. Are you 100% sure you didn't send a confusing text? Are you sure the invitation didn't have an old time on it from a draft?" It was a slap in the face. It was a cold, calculated pour of water on a raging fire. He was not comforting me. He was interrogating me. He was gaslighting me. A misunderstanding. I repeated, my voice flat. "Elias, did you hear him? He said Bianca showed him a text. He said I did it maliciously. He accused me of sabotaging her." "I know. And your dad sounded pretty sure," Elias said, nodding slowly, as if my father's certainty was the only piece of evidence that mattered. "And let's be fair, Amara. For Bianca, I mean buying your first brand new car, a convertible no less. That is a really big deal for someone like her. It's a major achievement. Maybe you just misjudged how important it was to her." For someone like her, a major achievement. He was using my father's exact words. He had heard the entire conflict, the entire dynamic, and his takeaway was that I was the one who had misjudged. That my 10 years of labor, my house was just a scheduling conflict for her big day. He was not just neutral, he was on their side. He had chosen them. I stood up. The trembling stopped. The hot tears dried on my face, leaving my skin feeling tight and cold. The rage I felt for my father was a wildfire. This was something different. This was a precise, surgical, and total betrayal. "Did you hear what I just said to him?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "Did you hear me tell him that I worked for 10 years for this house? Did you hear any of what I just went through?" Elias stood up too, a look of frustration on his face. He was the one who was annoyed. He was the victim of my emotional outburst. "Of course I heard you, Amara," he said, his voice rising, his patience finally gone. "I'm just saying there might be another explanation, that's all. You are always so defensive when it comes to your family. You're primed for a fight. You automatically assume the worst. You don't know that she lied. You just assume she did because it fits your narrative that you're the victim." That was it. My narrative. I looked at him. This man who I had planned to marry, this man who I had led into my life, this architect, this man of structure and logic. He was a coward. He was a man who, when faced with a difficult, ugly, emotional truth, would always side with the path of least resistance. He would always side with the rational explanation, even when it was a lie. He would always choose the side that made him feel most comfortable, most logical, most sane.
And in this family's insane dynamic, that meant I was the one who was wrong. I felt nothing. The love I had for him, the future I had tentatively planned, it all just evaporated. It turned to ash. I did not yell. I did not scream. I calmly, methodically lifted my left hand. I pulled the engagement ring off my finger. The diamond, which had always felt a little too heavy, a little too much of a compromise, was now just a cold piece of metal and stone. I held it out in my open palm. Elias stared at the ring, his face draining of color. The frustration vanished, replaced by a sudden stark panic. "Amara, what are you doing? Don't be dramatic." "Get out," I said. My voice was a flatline. "What?" "Amara, stop. Let's just sit down. We're both upset." "Get out," I repeated. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. "Take this and go." He looked from the ring to my face, searching for the hysteria he had been so sure was there. He found nothing. He found only the cold, hard finality of a decision. He saw the fortress walls, and he finally understood they were not for him either. He did not take the ring. He just stared at me, stunned. "Fine," I said. I closed my hand around the ring and walked to the front door, the heavy oak door I had bought. I opened it. The cool night air felt good on my hot face. "Get out of my house, now." He stumbled, grabbing his jacket from the back of the chair. He looked small. He looked confused. He walked past me, pausing in the doorway, as if one more logical argument could fix this. "Amara, this is crazy." I just looked at him. I said nothing. He finally left, walking down the stone steps. I watched him get into his sensible gray sedan and drive away. I closed the door. I locked the deadbolt. I leaned my forehead against the cool, solid wood. I had done it. I had lost my entire family and my fiancé in a single night. I was standing alone in my fortress, and the only thing I felt was relief. My phone was still on the sofa where I had dropped it after hanging up on my father. I had been standing by the door for a full minute, just breathing in the cool night air. The silence was absolute. Then the phone lit up again, vibrating angrily on the cushion. The screen read, "Mom calling." Of course, the other parent, the tag team. My father was the accuser, my mother would be the emotional guilt. I picked it up. I was too exhausted to fight, too numb to care. "Hello," I said. My voice was flat dead. "Amara Denise Peterson, my mother." Denise began, and her voice was thick with the manufactured tears I knew so well. They were the tears of righteous disappointment. "I have never in my entire life been so ashamed. How could you do this to your sister, after all she has been looking forward to?" I did not have the energy to argue. I just listened, my head leaning against the solid oak door. I listened as she repeated the same script. I had ruined Bianca's big day. I had done it out of jealousy. I had always been this way. "You have always been jealous of Bianca," she cried, her voice rising in pitch. "Ever since you were little girls. You could not stand it when she got any attention. You always had to one-up her to make everything about you and your achievements. And now this house. You had to have this party on the one day you knew she had something special." "The invitation was sent 2 weeks ago, Mom," I said, my voice tired. 2 weeks ago. I never changed the time. "She showed us your text, Amara," she insisted, her voice hardening. "She showed us. Why are you lying? Why do you always lie and twist things to make yourself the victim? You need to grow up. You need to stop these childish, selfish games." I felt nothing. The words which once would have shattered me now just floated past. They were just sounds. They had no meaning because the people saying them had no credibility. She was not a mother scolding a daughter. She was an actress reading a script Bianca had written. "I'm done," I said. "What did you say?" "You are not done until you—" "I'm done, Mom, with this conversation, with all of it." I hung up. I did not wait for her reply. I pressed the red icon, ending the second call in less than 10 minutes. I felt completely, utterly, and profoundly drained. I was an empty vessel. The rage was gone, the sadness was gone. All that was left was a cold, hollow, echoing exhaustion. I sank onto the sofa again.
My mind, now strangely calm and clinical, went back to one detail: the text. She showed us the text. My father had said it. My mother had said it. They were both clinging to this piece of evidence. Out of a kind of numb, morbid curiosity, I picked up my phone. I opened my text messages. I scrolled to my conversation with Bianca. I went back to yesterday. There it was. My message sent at 7:20 p.m. "Hey Ash, just confirming you guys are coming tomorrow at 3. Can't wait to show you the house." Her reply sent an hour later. "Totally, unless something comes up, LOL, but should be there." That was it. There was no mention of 6 p.m. There was no change. There was no argument. It was exactly as I remembered. I scrolled up, scrolled down. I read it over and over, looking for any way my words could have been misinterpreted. There was none. And then I saw it. Inserted into our conversation thread, time-stamped from this afternoon, were 2 screenshots. They were images of a text conversation. They were not texts from me, they were pictures of texts. They were formatted to look like my messages with the little blue bubble. But the font was almost imperceptibly different. The spacing was wrong. The fabricated conversation was short and damning. A fake Bianca text read, "Hey, are we still on for 6 tomorrow?" And a fake Amara text replied, "Actually, can we make it 3? I know that's when you wanted to get your car, but everyone is free earlier. It would really help me out." And another fake Bianca, "Oh, that's my big appointment. Can't you do 6? And the final cruel fake Amara, "Sorry, 3 it is. You'll just have to choose. Hope you can make it." I stared at the images. My blood ran cold. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not a simple, impulsive lie Bianca had told in the moment to save herself. This was premeditated. This was calculated. This was fraud. Just like Andre, my siblings were 2 sides of the same counterfeit coin. Bianca had sat down at her computer or used an app and created fake evidence. She had spent time typing out this malicious little play. She had fabricated a conversation that never happened, screenshotted it, and then sent it to herself in our message thread so she could show our parents. She had planned this. She had done this deliberately to make sure they would miss my party and to make it somehow entirely my fault. The level of manipulation, the sheer cold, psychopathic calculation required to do that was staggering. This was not sibling rivalry. This was sabotage. This was a character assassination executed with a cruelty I could barely comprehend. She had not just stolen my moment. She had poisoned it, set it on fire, and then blamed me for the ashes. I was sitting there, the phone heavy in my hand, the screen glowing with the proof of her sickness, when a new message popped up at the bottom of the screen. A new real text. From Bianca. It appeared right under the fake screenshot she had sent to herself. It read, "Hope party was fun. Sorry we couldn't make it, but my new car is amazing. Maybe next time don't try to make everything about you. Just saying." The casual, breezy, triumphant cruelty of it. The just saying. It was the verbal equivalent of a shrug, a casual dismissal of the profound wound she had just inflicted. She was not just the arsonist. She was the arsonist sending a postcard from her vacation telling me she hoped I was enjoying the fire. I turned the phone off. I did not throw it. I did not scream. I calmly pressed the side button until the screen went black. I curled up on my brand new sofa in my sage green living room in the house that was supposed to be my victory. The fortress had been breached. The sanctuary was tainted. I pulled my knees to my chest, and in the dark, silent, empty house, I finally truly let myself break. I woke up to the sun streaming into my blue-gray bedroom. The tears were gone. The gut-wrenching sorrow of the night before had evaporated, leaving behind a cold, sharp, crystalline clarity. It was not a feeling of defeat. It was a feeling of determination. I was not broken. I was not the hysterical, dramatic, selfish person they had all accused me of being. I was a woman who had been lied to, and I was not going to let it stand. I did not move quickly. I moved with a deliberate, cold purpose. I showered the hot water, washing away the phantom grime of yesterday's betrayal. I stood in my closet, bypassing the soft, comfortable clothes I would normally wear on a Sunday. I was not looking for comfort. I was looking for armor.
I chose my outfit with the care of a general preparing for a final negotiation. Dark-fitted denim, a crisp black silk blouse, the leather boots I had bought myself when I received my last promotion, the ones with the solid definitive heel. I put on my watch. I applied my makeup not to be beautiful, but to be severe. A sharp red lip, a clean, defined line of eyeliner. When I looked in the mirror, I did not see a victim. I did not see the crying, pleading woman from last night. I saw a 32-year-old executive who was about to handle a hostile situation. I was not going to her house to fight. I was going to her house to get the truth. I grabbed my phone, the evidence, and my car keys. I walked out of my front door, past the stone steps, and into the bright, unforgiving morning light. The drive to Bianca's apartment took 30 minutes. She lived in a trendy new construction building in a neighborhood I could not have afforded until 2 years ago. An apartment I knew for a fact my parents subsidized. The injustice of it, the fact that they funded her life while scrutinizing mine, was just another small log on the fire. I did not rehearse what I would say. I did not need to. For the first time in my life, I was not going to perform. I was not going to manage anyone's feelings. I was simply going to present the facts. I buzzed her apartment. She answered, her voice groggy and annoyed. "Hello? Bianca, it's Amara. Open the door." I did not ask. I told her. The confused silence lasted a few seconds, and then the buzzer sounded. I rode the elevator up my heart, a cold, steady drum. I walked down the carpeted hallway to her door and knocked. She opened it, and the contrast was almost comical. She was still in her pajamas, a short silk robe, her blonde hair piled into a messy bun. Her eyes were puffy, probably from a combination of sleep and the manufactured tears from last night. Surprise then, a flash of guilt, then pure, defiant annoyance crossed her face. "Amara, what are you doing here?" she said, crossing her arms, blocking the doorway. "We need to talk," I said. My voice was quiet, calm, and utterly immovable. "May I come in?" She hesitated, then huffed, stepping aside. Her apartment was stylishly decorated, but a complete mess: shopping bags from expensive boutiques piled in a corner, half-empty wine glasses on the coffee table. "Look, if this is about yesterday," she started, her voice already defensive. "I already told Mom and Dad what happened. You changed the time." I held up my hand, and she stopped talking. I did not say a word. I just took out my phone. I opened the text conversation. I held the screen up to her face, my hand perfectly steady. "This is our actual conversation, Bianca, from 2 days ago, where I confirm 3 p.m., and where you say you will be there." I scrolled down with my thumb. "And what," I asked, my voice still a cold, level whisper, "are these?" I showed her the fake screenshots, the ones she had created, the ones that had destroyed my night and cost me my fiancé. I watched her face. Her expression flickered. For a split second, I saw raw, unfiltered panic. She looked at the screenshots, and the blood drained from her face. She tried to laugh it off, a high, nervous sound. I don't know what that is. That's weird. You must have sent those. Stop," I said. The word was not loud, but it cut through the room. "Stop lying. The evidence is right here. You created fake messages. You fabricated an entire conversation, sent them to yourself in our thread, and then showed them to Mom and Dad. You deliberately and with calculation sabotaged my party. You made sure they would not come, and you made it my fault." I put the phone down. I just looked at her. She looked away, a flush creeping up her neck. Her defiant, pretty mask crumbled, and what was underneath was ugly. It was bitter. "You always have to be the center of attention, don't you?" She spat, her voice low and venomous. Perfect, successful Amara, with her perfect career, and now her perfect house. You just had to show it off, didn't you? I stared at her, genuinely stunned. Me, the center of attention. Bianca, my entire life has been lived in your shadow. You are the only person anyone has ever paid attention to. That is when she exploded. It was not a performance for our parents. It was a raw, genuine, toxic rage that had been simmering for 20 years. "My shadow." She shrieked, a laugh that sounded more like a sob breaking from her chest. "That is the stupidest thing I have ever heard. You have no idea, do you? You have no idea what it was like. Do you know what my childhood was? It was Bianca. Why can't you be more responsible like Amara? Look at Amara's report card, Bianca. Why can't you just try? Amara would never be that careless. Amara is so smart. Amara is so driven. Amara is going to be so successful. She was crying now, real tears of bitterness. You were the smart one. You were the good one. You were the one they were proud of. I was just the pretty one, the charming one, the one who had to be nice to everyone because she wasn't smart enough to be anything else. You got their respect. I just got dolls. I was speechless. We were not from the same family. We had grown up in the same beige house with the same two parents, but we had lived in completely parallel, separate, and equally damaging universes. I was the scapegoat for not being charming. She was the scapegoat for not being smart. My parents had used us against each other, two different weapons to satisfy their own unresolved issues. I saw in that moment that she was just as damaged as I was. But our damage had taken different forms. Mine had turned into a relentless, driving ambition. Hers had turned into a toxic, manipulative, and desperate need for attention. I processed this, the new information settling over me. The anger I felt, the sharp, cold rage was still there, but it was now complicated by this horrible, sad new understanding. Okay, I said, my voice softer but no less firm. Okay, I hear you, but that does not excuse what you did, and it does not explain this. I held her gaze. Let's say you are right. Let's say I was the smart one they were proud of. Let's say I was the favorite. Then you have to explain one thing to me. She wiped her nose, her crying subsiding into sniffling. If I am the favorite, I challenged her, if I am the one they are all so proud of, then why yesterday did they all choose you? Why did they abandon my housewarming, my 10 years of perfect work, to go celebrate your car? If I am the one who gets all the real respect, explain that to me, Bianca. She stared at me. The question hung in the air, a simple, undeniable fact that shattered her entire narrative. She had no answer. She just looked at me, her mouth slightly open, the victim in her colliding with the manipulator. And for the first time, she had nothing to say. Bianca stood there, her mouth open, the answer to my challenge completely gone. The silence in the room was sharp, brittle, and in that silence, we both heard it. A key scraped in the lock. The deadbolt turned. The apartment door swung open, and my parents, Walter and Denise, walked in. They stopped short, their faces a mask of confusion, surprised to see me there. My father was holding his briefcase. My mother was holding a small white bakery box, the kind with a string handle. They were not here for a confrontation. They were here for a comfort visit. Amara, my mother said, her voice instantly tight with disapproval. What are you doing here? Before I could answer, her eyes darted to Bianca, who had, as if on cue, crumpled. Her face, which had been twisted in a snarl of bitter honesty just a second before, dissolved into the familiar, helpless tears of a victim. Oh, sweetheart. My mother rushed past me, her duty clear. She dropped the bakery box on the counter and wrapped her arms around Bianca, pulling her into a protective hug. We came to check on you. Your father and I were so worried after last night. You sounded so devastated. She is upset, I said, my voice hard and loud. She's upset because I'm here to show you the truth. I stepped forward, my phone still in my hand, the screen still glowing with the evidence of Bianca's fraud. I held it out. Look, I insisted, my voice desperate, aimed at my mother. This is what I was trying to tell you. This is what Bianca created. She faked this conversation. These are not my texts. She made them to lie to you. Just look at it. My mother recoiled from the phone as if I were holding a weapon. She physically turned her shoulder, shielding Bianca from me and from the evidence. She just held Bianca tighter, rocking her gently. My father, Walter, put his briefcase down on the floor with a heavy, definitive thud. He crossed his arms. He barely glanced at the screen I was holding out. I don't know what you are trying to prove here, Amara, he said, his voice flat, exhausted, and full of a profound disappointment that was aimed entirely at me. But attacking your sister is not the way to handle this. You came here to her apartment to upset her even more. This is not helping. I am not attacking her, I said, my voice rising, bordering on a shriek. The frustration was choking me. I am showing you the truth. Why is it so hard for you to look? Why will you not just look at the phone?" "Because we know what we saw, Amara," my mother said sharply, her voice muffled in Bianca's hair. "We saw the texts, and we know our daughter." She was looking right at Bianca when she said it. The implication was a brutal physical blow. They knew her. They did not know me. And there it was, the final perfect agonizing tableau of my entire life playing out right in front of me. My sister, the aggressor, the liar, the manipulator, crying softly and performatively into my mother's shoulder. My father, the stern patriarch, standing guard, his arms crossed, protecting the family's fragile, false narrative. They were a solid, impenetrable unit, a fortress of their own built on a foundation of denial. And I was on the outside, the attacker, the stranger, the one with the evidence that nobody wanted to see, because seeing it would mean they were wrong. Seeing it would mean the entire system was a lie. Seeing it would mean they had to admit they had abandoned their other daughter for no reason at all. It was easier, so much easier, to just label me as the problem. "I think you should leave," my father said. His voice was not angry now. It was just tired. He was dismissing a difficult employee. He was closing a problematic file. "Your sister is upset enough. We are here to comfort her. You are not helping." My anger, the hot, clarifying rage that had carried me here, suddenly evaporated. It was gone. It left a vacuum, and what rushed in was not sadness. It was something colder, heavier. It was the deep, profound, and bottomless grief of finality. It was not that they could not see. It was that they would not see. I was the scapegoat. I was the one whose role it was to be the problem, so Bianca could be the one who needed saving, and they could be the ones who saved her. The system worked for all three of them. I was the only one it was destroying. I lowered my hand. I let the phone with its useless truth drop to my side. I nodded. A single slow acknowledgement of the reality I had been fighting my entire life. "You're right," I said quietly. They all looked surprised at my sudden compliance. "I will go." I walked to the door, my boots making no sound on her plush gray carpet. I paused with my hand on the doorknob. I looked back at the three of them, a perfect, tragic family portrait. "For the record," I said, my voice clear and steady, all the desperation gone. "The invitation always said 3 o'clock. I never changed the time. I wanted all of you there because despite everything, you are my family. And I thought my first home, the one I worked for 10 years to buy, was something worth celebrating together." I opened the door. I guess I was wrong. I did not slam it. I pulled it closed softly behind me. As the latch clicked, I heard my mother's voice, her tone instantly shifting from defensive to a sweet, soothing coo. "It's okay, sweetheart," she murmured to Bianca. "It's okay. Don't you worry about her. Your sister, she has always had a flair for drama. A flair for drama. My entire life. My achievements. My pain. My profound, gut-wrenching foundational betrayal. It was just a performance. It was an inconvenience. It was a flair for drama." I walked to my car, my face a perfect blank mask. I drove home to my house. The 30-minute drive was completely silent. I did not cry. I did not rage. I just drove. And as I pulled into my own driveway, as I looked at the solid, real porch I had dreamed of, as I put my own key into my own lock, I made the decision. The pursuit was over. I could not change them. I could not make them see a truth they were determined to ignore. But I could change how much power I gave them. I could change how much I cared. Starting today, I was done. I would not beg for their approval. I would not seek their recognition. I was finally truly on my own. After that day at Bianca's apartment, the silence was absolute. For 3 months, there was nothing. 90 days of no calls, no texts, no emails. The slammed door of my family's denial was a void. In the first few weeks, that silence was a suffocating, painful roar. Every time my phone buzzed with an unknown number, my heart would seize, thinking, "This is it. This is the apology. This is the moment they realize. But it was always a spam call. It was always a work email. The pain was a sharp, constant daily reminder of my abandonment of the finality of that moment in Bianca's apartment. But then gradually, a strange and unexpected transformation began. The pain did not just fade. It was replaced. The heavy, suffocating weight of their expectations, the constant low-grade grinding anxiety of waiting for their next judgment, the endless, exhausting work of seeking their approval, it all just lifted. I could breathe. For the first time in my 32 years, the air in my lungs felt like it was entirely my own. I poured this new, strange, terrifying freedom into my house. The house was no longer a tainted sanctuary. It was my only sanctuary. It had not betrayed me. It had held me while I cried, so I honored it. I went to the hardware store and bought bags of rich black soil flats of perennials and vegetable seedlings. I started a garden in the small, sunlit backyard. I spent my weekends on my knees in the dirt, my hands covered in earth. I learned to nurture things that simply grew. The soil did not judge me. The tomato plants did not demand I be quieter or prettier or less ambitious. They just responded to care. Inside, I built my home library. I unpacked the final dusty boxes of my books, the ones I had been dragging from one cramped apartment to another for 10 years. I slid each book into place on the built-in shelves I had so admired. As I organized them, I felt like I was reassembling myself. I was finding the parts of me that had existed long before the family dynamic had tried to sand them down. Who was I when I was not the scapegoat? Who was I when I was not the fixer? Who was I when my entire day was not built around achieving something just to prove my own existence? The void my family left was quickly and gratefully filled. Simone and Leon, my friends who had come early to the party, started a weekly dinner tradition with me rotating between our homes. My boss, Maria, who had seen the look of utter devastation on my face that day, became a quiet, fierce mentor. The people who had shown up, the ones who had celebrated my success, without caveat, they became my family. After a month of this new quiet life, I needed something more. I needed context. I called my Aunt Loretta. She was my mother's younger sister, the family's official black sheep. She was an artist who had fled Minnesota for the deserts of New Mexico 30 years ago and had never looked back. I told her everything. The house, the party, the red convertible, the fake screenshots, the fraud from Andre, and finally, the cold, logical betrayal of Elias. She listened a long, quiet pause on the other end of the line. When she finally spoke, her voice was dry, like the desert she lived in. "Oh, Amara," she sighed. "Honey, I am not surprised in the slightest." "You're not," I whispered. "No, you need to understand your mother, Denise." Loretta said, her voice sharp. "She doesn't hate you, Amara. She resents you. She resents you because you are the woman she was never brave enough to be. She sees her ambitious, smart-driven self in you, the part of her she had to bury to marry your father and become a teacher. And it scares her to death." "Bianca," she snorted. "Bianca is weak. Bianca is easy. Bianca needs her. You don't. And instead of being proud of you for having the strength she lacks, she punishes you for it." I sat on my refinished hardwood floor, the phone pressed hard against my ear, and I wept. But these were not tears of sadness. They were tears of validation. It was not just me. It was not my fault. It was generational. It was a sickness I had been born into. Her words were a key unlocking a prison I never even knew I was in. Aunt Loretta's final piece of advice was a name. "You need to talk to someone, Amara," she had said. "Someone who isn't family. His name is Dr. Hayes. He understands these systems." I made the appointment. In his quiet, calm office, I unpacked the entire toxic, convoluted story. The graduation dinner, the 10 years of saving, the house, Andre's fraud, Bianca's fake texts, the confrontation in her apartment. Dr. Hayes listened, nodding. He did not look shocked. He looked familiar. "What you are describing, Amara, he said, his voice kind but clinical, is a classic rigid family system. Your parents have assigned roles. Bianca is the golden child. She can do no wrong. She exists to be adored and excused. And you have been cast as the scapegoat. You carry all the family's anxieties, frustrations, and blame. It has nothing to do with who you actually are. It is the role they need you to play so the system can function. Scapegoat. Golden child. The words were a revelation. I was not crazy. I was not too sensitive. I was not dramatic. I was a person reacting normally to an abnormal abusive system. In our third session, he gave me the words that would become my new foundation. Amara, you cannot make people give you what they do not have. Your parents are incapable of seeing you clearly because their entire family structure depends on not seeing you. That is not a reflection of your worth. It is a reflection of their limitation. That was the turning point. I stopped waiting. I stopped seeking the conditional love that was always just out of reach. I was done. I went to a salon and cut my hair. I got a short, asymmetrical bob, a style my mother had always told me was too severe. It felt like freedom. At work, I stopped hedging. I stopped softening my opinions. I walked into a pitch meeting for a major new client, defended my most unconventional, aggressive idea, and won the account. The next week, Maria promoted me to creative director. Then 6 weeks after I had last seen my family, a text came from an unknown number. Hey sis, it's Andre. Got a new phone? Can we talk? Not about family stuff. Just want to see how you are. I hesitated for a full day, but I agreed. We met at a neutral, crowded coffee shop. He looked older than 24. He looked thin, exhausted, and haunted. He did not waste time on small talk. Amara, he said, staring into his coffee. I am so sorry about everything. The money. I lost my biggest freelance client. I panicked. It was a stupid, awful thing to do, and I will pay you back every cent. And about the party. I should have been there. I should have said something. Why didn't you? I asked, my voice flat. I was not ready to forgive. He finally looked up, and the guilt in his eyes was raw and real. Because Bianca has been doing this to you for years, our whole lives, and I let her. He then told me things I never knew. The important scholarship email from a university I had wanted to attend, the one that disappeared from the family computer. Bianca had deleted it. The antique locket our grandmother left for me, the one that went missing and was later found broken in Bianca's jewelry box. She had taken it. I was stunned. My history was a lie rewritten by her jealousy. Why? I whispered. Because you threaten her. Andre said, his voice full of a new, bitter understanding. You're everything she's not. Independent, successful, smart, and she has to tear you down to feel big. And Mom and Dad just let her. He leaned in, his voice dropping. But she messed up this time, Amara. She got sloppy. She bragged to me. She bragged about the fake texts and how she knew they'd all believe her. He pulled out his phone, and I have the proof. I saved them all. Andre's proposition came 2 weeks later in a text message that made my heart race. I have all the proof, Amara, the texts, all of it. I think it's time they knew the truth, all of it. I can't let this go on. He proposed a meeting. My parents, him and me, neutral territory. My first instinct was a visceral, protective no. I had found such a profound, healing peace in their absence. My garden was thriving. My work was fulfilling. My home was my sanctuary. Why would I invite the wolves back to the door? Why would I subject myself to their inevitable denial, to their wall of defense? I had spent a lifetime trying to show them the truth, and they had actively, repeatedly chosen to be blind. I discussed it with Dr. Hayes. You have no obligation to go, he told me, his voice calm and steady. Your healing does not depend on their apology, but, he continued, ask yourself what you need. This isn't about them. It's about you. Is there value for you in reclaiming your own story, in presenting the facts, not for their validation, but for your own? I realized he was right. This was not about reconciliation. It was not about forgiveness. It was not about hearing them say, I'm sorry.
It was about taking the narrative they had twisted for 30 years and setting it straight once and for all. It was about taking the drama they accused me of and showing them the cold, hard, factual evidence of the abuse. I would not go there seeking an outcome. I would go there to state the truth, and if they could not hear it, I would walk away, my head held high, knowing I had finally said my piece, armed with irrefutable proof. I will go, I told Andre, but on my terms. I will not argue. I will not yell. I will not be gaslit. We will present the evidence. That is all. The meeting was set for a Sunday afternoon at a quiet, neutral restaurant halfway between my house and theirs. Andre came to my house first. He was dressed in a suit looking less like my younger brother and more like a young lawyer. He was carrying a slim, black professional briefcase. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, his face a mixture of nervousness and grim resolve. "I am," I said, and I was surprised to find that I meant it. My parents, Walter and Denise, were already seated when we arrived. They looked older. The past few months of silence had clearly taken a toll on them, too. They looked tired, anxious, and wary, like people bracing for a blow. The small talk was excruciating, a thin, brittle layer of ice over a deep, dark ocean. We talked about the weather. We talked about Andre's new job. Then, after the waiter took our orders, Andre placed the black briefcase on the table and clicked it open. My mother flinched. My father's eyes narrowed. "Mom, Dad." Andre began, his voice quiet, but carrying a new, unfamiliar authority. "We are here because you need to know the truth about what happened at Amara's party, but also about a pattern that has been going on for our entire lives." My father, Walter, immediately stiffened. He crossed his arms, the familiar wall going up. "Andre, if this is just another attempt to blame your sister—" "It is not an attempt," Andre interrupted, his voice cutting sharp and clear. "It is a presentation of facts, and all I am asking is that you listen and that you look." He pulled out the first file. He laid it on the table. It was my original cream-colored invitation. "Exhibit A," he said, his voice dry. "The invitation. As you can see, the time is clearly listed as 3 p.m. It was never 6 p.m. He then laid out the next document. It was a printout of my text chain with Bianca showing my confirmation of the 3 p.m. time and her acknowledgement. "And this," he said, "is Exhibit B." He slid 2 more pieces of paper onto the table. They were the enlarged printed copies of the fake screenshots, the ones Bianca had created. "These are the fraudulent messages Bianca showed you. If you look at the font, it doesn't even match Amara's. She fabricated them." My mother's face was pale. She was shaking her head in a small, repetitive motion. No, Andre. She wouldn't. There must be an explanation." "I am the explanation, Mom," Andre said. He then pulled out the final damning file. It was a printout of his text conversation with Bianca. He slid it in front of my father. "Exhibit C. This is Bianca bragging to me 2 days after the party about how she taught Amara a lesson, how she knew you would believe her if she faked the texts, how she knew you would choose her new car over Amara's stupid house party. It's all right here, in her own words." I watched my father's face. I watched the accountant's mind, the man of logic and facts, process the undeniable black and white proof in front of him. His skepticism, his anger, his conviction, it all just dissolved. It was like watching a building collapse in slow motion. His face went from red to white to a sick, ashen gray. He put his hand on the table to steady himself. My mother, Denise, just stared at the texts, her hand over her mouth, a low, choked sob escaping her. "No," she whispered. "No, she wouldn't. She wouldn't do that to her sister." "She did, Mom," Andre said, his voice softening just a little. "She did, and it's not the first time." He then briefly, clinically mentioned the deleted scholarship email, the broken locket, a lifetime of sabotage laid bare on a restaurant table. My father sat in stunned, broken silence for a full minute. He looked up, his eyes for the first time landing on me. He did not see the scapegoat. He did not see the dramatic, difficult daughter. He just saw me. And he looked horrified.
He finally cleared his throat, his voice rough with an emotion I had never heard from him. "Call her," he said. "What?" Andre asked. "Call Bianca. Tell her to get to this restaurant, right now." The 30 minutes we waited for Bianca to arrive were the most tense, agonizing, and silent moments of my life. My parents sat like statues, two people who had just been shown that the foundation of their entire family was a lie. My father just stared at the text messages, reading them over and over as if trying to find a loophole. My mother cried quietly into a napkin. Then Bianca breezed in. She was a whirlwind of bright colors, a fashionable coat and a wide, confident smile, a smile that faltered the second she saw the briefcase on the table and the apocalyptic look on our parents' faces. "What is going on?" she asked, her voice wary, sliding into the empty chair. "Is this some kind of intervention? We need to talk about the housewarming party, Bianca." My father said, his voice dangerously quiet. Bianca's eyes darted to me, then to Andre. The mask of defiance snapped into place. "Oh my God, are we still talking about that? It was months ago. Amara, you have to let this go." "Did you lie to us, Bianca?" My mother whispered, her voice trembling. Did you fake those text messages?" Bianca saw her opening. She saw my mother's weakness, and she lunged for it, turning on the tears. "I can't believe this. You're all ganging up on me. Amara has turned you all against me. I told you what she did. "Stop talking," Andre said. His voice was not loud, but it silenced the entire table. He pushed the printouts of his conversation with her, her bragging words directly in front of her face. "I saved them, Bianca. I saved all of it." I watched her face as she read her own words. The defiance, the confidence, the manipulative tears. It all evaporated. She was cornered. She was trapped. The evidence was irrefutable, and for the first time in her life, there was no one to rescue her. The system was broken. She stared at the paper, and her face crumpled into a genuine, ugly, childish despair. "Fine!" She finally shrieked, the word tearing out of her. "Fine! I did it. I did all of it. Are you happy now, Amara? You win. You finally turned everyone against me. This is what you always wanted." "No," I said, my voice quiet, devoid of triumph. I just felt tired. This is not a game, Bianca. This is not about winning. This is about the truth. I need to understand why. Her answer when it came was not a manipulation. It was not a performance. It was a raw, heartbreaking, and pathetic truth that she sobbed out to the entire table. "Because it was so easy," she wept, her shoulders shaking. "It was always so easy to make you the bad guy, and everyone always believed me, and I was afraid. I was so afraid that if they all went to your stupid, perfect house and saw your perfect, successful life, they would see how amazing you really are, and they wouldn't love me anymore." The table was silent. The raw, poisoned 30-year-old truth was finally in the open. My mother looked devastated. My father looked broken. He slowly turned his chair to face me. His eyes were filled with a profound, terrible regret. "Amara," he said, his voice thick, I do not know if you can ever forgive us for any of this. We should have seen. We should have known. We let this happen. We chose to be blind." I looked at him, at my mother, at my sobbing sister, at my brother, who sat there with a look of sad, quiet vindication. This was not a Hollywood ending. This was not a moment of easy forgiveness. The trust was not broken. It had never existed in the first place. I took a deep breath. "I don't know what happens next," I said, and the honesty of it felt freeing. "I am not that girl from the graduation dinner anymore. I am not the girl who waited by the door. I have spent the last few months building a life that does not revolve around seeking your approval. I have found my own worth in my own house." I looked at all of them one by one. "I am willing to see if we can build something new, but it will be something new, and it will be based on honesty, this honesty, or it will be nothing at all." The weeks that followed were a slow, careful, and awkward reconstruction. Bianca started therapy, a condition my father in his new clear-eyed state insisted upon. My parents came to my house. They came for dinner. They did not just stand in the entryway. They walked through every room, and for the first time they truly saw the work. They touched the refinished floors. They admired the paint. My father looked at my built-in bookshelves full of my books and said, This is an incredible accomplishment, Amara. I am so proud of you." And for the first time, I believed him. 3 months after our restaurant confrontation, I hosted another housewarming party. It was a symbolic reset. This time my parents and Andre arrived 2 hours early. They came to help. My mother brought food. My father helped set up chairs. That evening, I stood in my sage green living room holding a glass of wine and looked around. The room was full. My friends Simone and Leon, my chosen family, were laughing with my brother. My mother was in the kitchen talking to Maria, my boss. My father was on the porch just sitting, enjoying the space. It was not a perfect happy ending. The wounds were still there. But it was a new beginning. It was a foundation built not on lies and shadows, but on a difficult, painful, and finally undeniable truth. My home had finally truly become my sanctuary. The hardest truth I learned is that you cannot force someone to see your worth. For years, I believed that if I just achieved more, worked harder, or became more perfect, my family would finally see me. The betrayal taught me that their blindness was not a reflection of my value. It was a reflection of their own limitations and the toxic roles they needed me to play. True liberation didn't come from finally winning their approval. It came from the moment I realized I no longer needed it to validate my own existence. My revenge was not in proving them wrong. It was in building a life so full and authentic that their opinion became irrelevant.